of that then and saying,
Am I supposed to be looking
here we
somewhere
are.
or looking at
You're just going to be looking at me. We're just going to be looking at each other. So would I just start looking down there? Okay. Okay. So normally I would just hold up my iPhone. That was really, really smooth the way I just did that. I would just do this when I meet people. I just shoot my interviews like that. But when your friend has a super cool studio, you use that. You don't just hold an iPhone up. So, Brett, I feel like I would be not doing you justice if I was to just use an iPhone in the world headquarters of IMCA.
I don't know if you're talking about Nate or if you're talking about me as your friend.
Well, aren't we friends? Oh, wow. I don't want to do this anymore. We're in Vinton. Where is Vinton, Iowa?
Where?
Yeah. Explain it.
Explain it?
Mm-hmm.
In the middle of the country. In the middle of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
In eastern Iowa.
Okay.
Central eastern Iowa.
Central eastern Iowa.
Yeah. We're like in the middle of everything. We're like 4 hours from Minneapolis and 4 hours from Chicago, 4 hours from St. Louis, 4 hours from Kansas City.
How many hours from Des Moines?
2.
Most Aussies, when they first come here, they said Des Moines.
Des Moines. Yeah, we hear that.
Mm. You're born and raised in Iowa, right?
Yes.
By the way, this is Brett Root, everybody. And before all you Aussies are going,
I'm even going.
yeah, now he knows because I told him.
I know.
Yeah, because Americans will often say to Aussies, who you're rooting for. That's an awkward moment.
Yeah.
We generally
Sounds
say,
like it.
Then you say who you're pulling for, which is even worse. So Brett is the president of IMCA, which stands for?
The International Motor Contest Association.
Not International Motor Claims Association.
Money collecting agency.
Collecting?
There's all kinds of really one. Wow. Some of them are kind of fun.
Huh.
I find humor in all of them, to be quite honest. But
I Might Crash Anywhere. Have you heard that? Have you heard that one before?
I haven't heard that one.
Write that one down. IMCA is a sanctioning body. That's not all it is, but is that the way I would describe IMCA racing?
Yeah, I think so.
Like licensing, sanctioning.
Yeah, we're a sanctioning body. You know, by definition, we write and enforce racing rules.
Do you promote as well? Do you promote events?
I think over the years we've probably transitioned into more to where people expect us to promote events. We aren't really per se the promoters or promoter of an event. Most events have a promoter, an event promoter, and they sanction with us.
Yep.
Like a franchise would. They're like a franchisee, I guess, to a certain extent, within reason.
So IMCA Super Nationals.
Right.
That makes it sound very much like it's your event, like you're promoting that at Boone Speedway.
That is that particular event. I would say, yeah, we probably are as much of the promoter as Boone Speedway is, or Lottie is, the track promoter.
So the IMCA started effectively in the early 1900s, like around wartime.
Yeah, 1915. Yeah, it's been around for a long time.
So stock car kind of stuff, or like old super modified, or jalopies, like what?
I think it was a little bit of everything. I think when you get into the big car and the sprint car stuff in the 60s and 50s and 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s, in that era, big car kind of stuff they called it. Again, way before my time. But, these days, most, at least I especially identify ourselves with the modified. The IMCA modified is...
You identify as?
Is somewhat...
Not going to go down that road, are we? What do you identify yourself as, Brett?
As a modified.
Okay. So if you progress IMCA in that 1915 period to the middle to late 70s, that's where your family first came into contact. The Root family, or Root, you guys say Root, we say Root, family came into contact with IMCA. Through your mum, right?
Yeah, through my mother. My mother was the Keith Kanak, who owned IMCA at the time. She was his first full-time employee.
Okay.
First full-time employee in like 1976 or so, mid-70s. Again, I was born in 72, so I don't remember much about that period.
So he was a number of things. He was into classic furniture, like antique furniture, things like that. and he also had Hawkeye Racing News, which was considered at the time to be one of the main racing newspaper or forms, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't tell the story near as well as my mother can. But, yeah, I mean, he had the Collector's Journal, which was an antique paper. So he would go to auctions. He'd go to a lot of auctions, and he'd go to races. And I think when he started covering races is when his interest in IMCA evolved. And I think he saw the need for an affordable division of race cars at that time in the late 70s. I think, racing wasn't at its peak by any means. I think a lot of facilities were struggling to get car counts.
Yeah.
And so that's when Keith introduced the IMCA Modified.
Okay. So that was with your mum involved as an employee. Did anyone in your family race at that point? Was your dad a racer, or did you race? Or
No, my dad has never raced that I'm aware of. And I raced a little bit in the mid to late 90s when I got out of college.
Yep.
But, yeah, other than that, no. I mean, it's not like we come from a racing background where we have race cars in our garages and we've all raced. Like a lot of the people you see these days, the generational.
Yeah.
They've been racing for generations.
But you've been around the sport your whole life then. You've been in the pits and at events and things with your mum and dad since you were little.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I've been around racing my entire life for the most part. I sell programs.
Did you?
Oh, yeah. I was a kid that sold programs. And
what did you get per copy you sold? Was that 50 cents or something? Was it $1 or?
No, it was less than $1 if I remember correctly. It was something like 75 cents or yeah. That was so long ago. I didn't like doing that. I didn't like
meeting people.
There's some of that, yeah. Probably more the rejection of, do you want a program? No, that you get it when that's a, it's no different than selling anything to people, like that.
Okay.
I didn't enjoy that. I didn't enjoy doing that. But I worked at the racetracks when I was little. I wanted to be in the junior fan club, and I had to break my arm to get junior fan of the week.
Really? That's commitment.
That's what I thought. I kept saying, "Man, when am I going to be the junior fan of the week?" And I wasn't going to get picked when your mother worked at the racetrack. But broke my arm and I won that. So are you
a race fan? Is that a stupid question?
No, I don't think it's a stupid question. I think most everybody in my opinion, most everybody in the sport is a race fan to some extent or another. Yeah, I've always been a race fan. I always, wanted to race myself, wanted a go-kart. Okay. My parents wouldn't buy me a go-kart when I was little. I always wanted a go-kart, and they couldn't afford it. So, I always rode I had a best friend named Kurt. His mom spoiled him, and so we'd ride Kurt's go-kart. True story.
You live vicariously through Kurt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Kurt's still one of my best friends.
That's cool.
To this day, yeah.
So your family went from being where Mum worked for Keith to then purchasing the company at some point?
Yeah. Yeah, it would have been in the mid-90s. I was in college. Oh, it would have been 95. I graduated from high school in 90 and went to college. And
to study what?
I went a little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, I actually went to school for CNC programming, automation and production, with an emphasis in robotics. So I really enjoyed manufacturing, making things, and I got a degree in NC programming. So I enjoyed that a lot. I like making shit.
Yeah.
I just enjoyed that. I thought that's what I was going to do with my career, and it would have been about the time I graduated. My mother had said to me, hey, I think I'm going to buy IMCA. If I do, would you be interested in working there someday? And I'm like, oh, I don't see why not. I like racing, At the time, I'd put myself through school as a mechanic. I went to school for NC programming, but I worked as an automotive mechanic for 5 years. And so once I finished that, I thought I was going to I thought about trying, getting into the automotive industry a little bit, and somehow ended up working at Real Racing Wheels in Independence, doing all their jig and fixture design, NC programming, and it was in the racing industry, and about that time when I first started there, my mother had said she was going to buy IMCA, and so and she did, and I worked at Real Racing Wheels for 2 years.
Huh.
when she said, "Hey, you want to come work for IMCA?" And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? She was, "Well, we need a marketing director." And I'm like, well, shit, I don't know nothing about that. I didn't go to school for marketing.
Yeah.
But, I liked racing and enjoyed racing. At that point, I had worked in the industry for a couple years. So I kind of knew a little bit of the lay of land. So it wasn't foreign to me, so to speak. And I've been around it a lot of my life. So I've always been a huge race fan. So why not?
So your mum obviously was a bit of an entrepreneur. Was Dad the same? Like, did they do it together, or was this Mum's project?
Mom's project. My dad worked for the county.
Yeah,
he was a county surveyor here at Benton County, Iowa, for his whole life. Retired from the county. Yeah. So yeah, my dad didn't have anything to do with racing.
Okay.
I mean, he would go. We joked all the time. My dad was we called him the hospitality director. You know, my dad just liked
HD.
Yeah, my dad just liked to, hang out and bullshit with people.
Yeah.
My dad's good at it.
Yeah. So how many, roughly, or do you even know the number, cars or drivers are sanctioned or licensed by IMCA?
We usually, these days, the last few years, we've hovered right around 9,100 members.
Okay.
Racers, that's membership numbers.
Racers, not pit crew, that's actual
That's
people
just,
that take the wheel.
Yep.
Almost 10,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, when I started at IMCA, I think we had somewhere around 4.
Jeez.
Which would have been in 97.
So would this make you one of the largest sanctioning bodies in America?
I would think so. I would say definitely in dirt track racing, for sure. I would say we probably are the largest membership-based. But, I mean, there's a lot of different associations that we aren't terribly familiar with, and other type of motorsports, motorcycles and
Yeah. But in the form that you're talking about, in modifieds and stock cars, in sport compact, in hobby stocks, sport mod, you'd be the biggest in America, which would mean you're the biggest in the world.
Yeah, I would say so.
Have you ever given that any thought?
Not really. No.
Is it not something to be proud of?
No, it's something to be proud of, but I don't know how you say it. I don't know if I would necessarily. Being successful has been probably the most important thing for IMCA as an association, to be successful, as a business to be successful, that's probably has been what my focus is. And, obviously.
What is successful? Is it profitable? Is it enjoyable? What's success?
I think it's a variety of things. I wouldn't say it's just, obviously profitable is important, so we can pay our bills and have staff. I mean.
How many staff do you have?
Full-time 11 full-time employees, including myself. So I think we're a pretty small business. I couldn't imagine having 50 employees or 250 employees.
Yeah.
But I think success is important. Do the best we can at what we do.
Yep.
I've always, I don't know who said it, but I've always kind of followed the philosophy that find something that you're really good at and be the best at it, and so I've always I've always thought that me being at IMCA, how I ended up here and the story of my family is, everything happens for a reason. So I've always thought I'm here for a reason. So, and I think I care about it a lot. I enjoy it. I'm a race fan. I enjoy racing. I have my whole life. I just always felt like, this is kind of where I'm meant to land, so to speak. And so I try to do the best I can at it, be the best at it.
So my exposure to IMCA was, we called you IMCA in Australia.
We get called that a lot.
Which we understood was, the International Motor Contest Association, I think is what we believed it was, because there's AMCA in Australia, which is the Australian Motor Contest Association, which was a claim engine rule thing, was all we heard about, that there's this class in America, people can buy your engines. And so that was a big, thing, my exposure to it. Over the years, I've probably been loosely exposed to IMCA racing without knowing that that's what it was. Like if there was stock cars on or some of that, but very rarely do you see stock cars with sprint cars. Right. It's not often you see that, or bombers or hobby stocks or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So when this event called the Super Nationals came onto my radar several years back, someone said, "Oh, you need to go to this event in Boone called the Super Nationals," and I thought, "Wow, I always thought the word nationals was the pinnacle." You know what I mean? Like every event aspires to call themselves the Nationals.
Yeah.
So when did it become an idea to call something the Super Nationals?
I have no idea. I don't know how it ended up. I'm sure if you talk to my mother, she would probably be able to answer that question much better than me. Some of this stuff is just it's been that way for so long.
Yeah.
You know, and how it ended up there, I'm not sure.
Because when you put the word super in front of anything, super size,
Yeah.
you know, super national,
It's
Superman.
It's just that much better.
Yeah. Well, and effectively,
Well, it's super.
it is super. Like it's, I try to explain this to my friends in Australia that there's over 1,000 cars this year. How many do you have? 1,017?
Yeah. 1,017.
I mean, that alone. I say you start racing at 2:00 every day and you finish around 2:00 the next day, although you try not to finish that late.
Yeah. Our goal is usually, we don't want to race any later than midnight. That's the goal. That's what we try to do. But
it is, I don't want to place too much emphasis on the number 1,000 because as much as it's a jaw dropper, it's not the essence of what that event is. You could have 700 cars.
Yeah.
Would it be any less successful? I don't think so. It might represent a different back gate return, but once you pass a certain line in the sand with car numbers, because I remember this year, even like, pre-entries are a bit slower this year. We might not get 1,000, 800, 900.
yeah, they trickled in at a little different rate this year than last year, which had us wondering where it was all going to land.
Yeah.
But yeah, 1,000 cars is plenty of cars for a race, you know. And I think you and I've talked about it. It to a certain extent, it's too many. You know, in one aspect, it's impressive because you know, I think in circle track dirt racing in the United States, you're going to be hard pressed to find another event that's close to that. You know, if a racetrack gets a couple hundred cars, 200 or 300 cars, that's pretty impressive by most standards. You know, and we blow that out of the water by triple.
Yeah.
You know, so it's cool. It's in one aspect, it's really cool to be able to be a part of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's an awful lot of racing. So it hurts us at times. It does, I think, hinder some of the things we want to do outside of just racing, because there is far more to the Super Nationals than just racing. You know what I mean?
So the Boone Speedway, I show people my videos, but I get back to Australia and I go, look at this, and wait for it, 5 wide, right?
Yeah.
3 wide modified A main start, 33 cars in it. And I show people catwalks, which in Australia, a catwalk is something that a model walks on. It's certainly not that you cram 2,000 rabid IMCA fans onto on 3 different levels to watch racing. And the catwalks go all the way through turn 1 and 2 and then into turn 3. Then you got the oil rig grandstand, big one up in turn 1. It is a very unique layout. Are there any other tracks like Boone like that in America? Is that the norm?
It's not the norm. There's a lot of promoters that come that probably take ideas from Boone and go back and try to copy them or have their own version of it. Heart of Texas Speedway in Waco, Texas, where my wife is from, is one of those facilities that their promoters have come to the event for a few years, went back and built catwalks, you know, and so it's I think that's cool. I think it says a lot about the event and a lot about Boone Speedway, and when people come, and we encourage promoters to come and take ideas back to improve their facilities. Again, if you're not improving what you're doing every year, you know, I mean, what are you doing? You know, how are you going to stay relevant? You know, so I think a lot of promoters that come that with that in mind, they go back and improve their facilities, and I think it usually shows.
When I jump off the flag stand onto the track, off the wall there to run across the track, it's in the back of my mind, I could get run over by 6 John Deere and 2 full-size school buses if I trip over. The farming concept, you guys call it farming, we just call it grading the track. And I've got to be honest, a lot of tracks in America I don't see even grade the track on race night. It's like what you get is what you get.
Yes.
The team that they have at Boone is such a well-oiled, like you farm every 12 races, 10 or 11 races, right, generally. Yeah. And you hot lap one session, hot lap the track in, and then you go again.
Yep.
Rod Robbins is a freak. Like that team is so well drilled.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Lottie has orchestrated that over the years. I mean, Rod is the main guy now, I would say, but Lottie's still pretty actively involved. You know, I like to sit with him at the event, and especially during different conditions, during the day, during the evening, when it's raining, when it's not raining, a lot of different conditions, and just listen to him talk about it. You know, because he'll just sit there and say, oh, they got too much water on the bottom, or they got too much water. He says that stuff, and to me, it's just like, well, it looks like they're doing the same thing every time they're out there. And a lot of people think that they do. They just go out there and it's the exact same thing, but it's not. It's not. They put water in different places in different amounts. You know, there's a lot of adjusting that's going on constantly on the fly from farm session to farm session between races.
There's a picture that was taken on the late Saturday night of the IMCA TV team. It's got to be over 20 people. Nate, is it over 20 people in that picture, I was guessing? Right. So IMCA TV team, when you count the announcers who walk in and just Hollywood it while the other ones do the hard work, 25 people are involved in the production of Super Nationals TV week. Yeah. And I've got to say, they do every bit as good, if not better, than Flow and Dirt Vision, and I say that with respect. The drones, the camera angles, the production, the colour, the editing, the switch, phenomenal. Do you ever get a sense of just what work goes into the IMCA TV? I mean, it's part of your program, part of your arsenal of IMCA, but do you get a sense of how big that is?
Well, sure. I mean, they're employing more people at that event than we are as the association that runs the event. You know, there's 11 of us there, and there's 25 or 26 of them there. So
they get catering. They get nice food.
They do it right. Oh. I get a little jealous but I'm like,
I had chicken fried steak one night.
Yeah, I mean,
like, wow.
Yeah, one night Chris said, "Hey, you hungry?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, there's barbecue out in the trailer." I'm like, "Really? Why am I eating a walking taco from the racetrack?" So yeah, I get a little jealous of that. But I don't know. I mean, everything happens for a reason. I still get back to that, and without going into great detail about my relationship with Chris
Grainer, who's the main man of IMCA TV. Yeah,
right. I've known Chris for at least 15 years, probably. And done business with him probably off and on at least like 10 of those years maybe. But everything happens for a reason, and where we're at with IMCA TV and Chris's guidance and his knowledge, I'd like to say that him and I have similar personalities in some aspects, you know, where he's trying to make things better, improve things. He's much smarter than I am. I know that for sure. He's the dumbest, smartest guy I know, I tell him. But he's assembled a really spectacular group of individuals, you know, starting with Nate, who, you know, I've known Nate before he worked for IMCA TV. I've known Nate for quite a while now, and the fact that he picked up and he moved his wife here, and he has, you know, 4 small kids and lives in Vinton, to me is a huge commitment on his behalf. And to me, it's things like that, people like Nate and Chris and the people who are putting the production on of what we have to offer from a racing standpoint are extremely talented, extremely dedicated.
Very creative.
Very creative. They
How much of that do you oversee? Because I see these guys take things and run with them. I don't know when they have time to have production meetings, but suddenly there's a video clip about Ryan and Jerry breaking up. Suddenly there's a video about Boone Speedway Mark II. Suddenly there's a video about... They're extremely creative. Do you get to see any of that ahead? Do you approve anything, or you just have trust in them?
A little bit of both. You know, they create some of that on their... I wish I was smart enough to come up with some of those ideas, but, you know, they come up with things, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Well, sure. You know, you want to participate? And I'm like, sure, yeah, why not? I always take the angle, like, okay, if we put a story out there that we're building another racetrack at Boone Speedway, what bad could happen? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
It's provoking discussion.
It is, and you know, obviously, there's, you know, Lottie says mm-hmm. He's always said, I don't care if it's good press or if it's bad press. As long as they're talking about you. As long as they spell my name right. He's always said that, you know, and I'm like, man, he's kind of right in one aspect, within reason. But that, you know, this the creativeness that some of the things they come up with this year is pretty was pretty entertaining, and I enjoyed being.
Entertaining too, I think, is not a bad
I
word for that.
enjoy-
Actually, entertainment. I think that
it was pretty entertaining, and it was fun, which is also kind of cool because I think
it
there's
has to be fun because otherwise it's
correct.
just too long.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy not to, if you can't laugh at yourself, and if you can't, take time to step back from the seriousness of everything at times, and poke a little fun or have a little fun with it. I mean, what are you doing it for? I've always been that way. I always ask people, racers especially, that are pissed off. You see a lot of upset racers, and competition-wise, they get bent out of shape, twisted, and especially if they're really going irate. I always ask them, "Are you having fun racing?" If you're not having fun, why are you doing this?
It's a sobering question, isn't it?
Yeah, I always ask it. If somebody's just on the chip, mad about something, irate, and we deal with some pretty interesting situations as a sanction. And are you having fun doing this? Because it doesn't show it. Sometimes you just go, it doesn't seem like you're having fun.
The influence of drones in the last 5 or 6 years in racing has been pretty widespread and very impactful. But that's mainly a slow-moving drone that gets the beautiful aerial shots and some crowdies and things like that. But I don't think I've seen anywhere in dirt racing quite the level of first-person view drone work. Like it makes your racing look like it's a computer game. It is so incredibly fifth-dimensional.
Yeah.
These two guys that just have a way of getting so close to the action, and the stuff over the top of the cars gives you, it's actually what it's done is it's probably promoted the skill level of the drivers, because you see guys put a slider in and be inches apart, and you're right over the top of that. That is phenomenal. No one else is doing it like that.
It puts you, obviously GoPros we've used them for years, and you go back a few years and we were talking about, we wanted to actually put GoPros in every single car on the track for the Super Nationals A mains, and be able to switch cameras in them while they're live, instead of having to go back and download video and then edit it and put it in. We thought that would be cool, and I don't know. Chris came up with it. Chris is like, hey, I always tell him, hey, I just want to do cool shit. Let's just do cool stuff. We want to do cool stuff, and somehow the FVP came up, and next thing you know, or FPV.
Yeah.
Golly,
Yeah, not factory value parts. We're talking about first-person view.
Yeah. I always get
okay.
the P and the V mixed up.
Easy mistake to make.
Yeah, I mean, when Chris said, hey, we're gonna try that, and I'm like, okay, yeah, sounds cool. And he goes, well, it's going to be expensive. And I'm like,
what's expensive?
But
you do invest. We talked about that this morning. You do invest heavily back into your product.
Absolutely.
Into your facilities, into your equipment, into your staff. You do invest a lot back into that.
It's the number one thing that in my opinion, as a business, you have to offer is the people, and the tools they have at their disposal to make your business better, to service the business. We're a service business here at IMCA. I mean, we're sanctioning events. They're following our rules. They get into situations where, the enforcement of the rules, they need somebody there to assist them. That's what we do, and so having a staff that, their car don't break down on the way to the races, their phones work.
The trailer breaks down.
The trailer break, yeah. We have our moments. But yeah, I mean, having a staff and having
and investing back in that, yep.
Yeah, trying to improve it, and it's funny because the streaming stuff is changed the dynamics a little bit around here as an association. I think it gives us a little bit more of a voice instead of relying on other people, other media to do stuff for us. We're starting to do it internally ourselves, because I feel like we don't get enough credit. I feel like we don't get enough attention. Our racers don't get enough attention. So if somebody's not going to do that, if an outside source isn't going to do that, we'll do it ourselves. So the streaming has done a lot of really cool things for us. And it's allowed us to generate a little bit of revenue, capture some of that revenue Boone is a good example of that, because you get people that come from California, for example, right? And they come to the Super Nationals. The racer might bring his wife. More than likely, they don't bring his kids. They're in school, if they're school age. But they don't bring the whole race team. They might bring a couple, but they don't bring their grandma and their grandpa and their mom and their dad, all their siblings or any of their brothers and sisters and all that other stuff. So it allows us to capture some of it, give those people that can't come the opportunity to watch.
Yep.
And it's a revenue generating aspect from us, from our standpoint. But then we can also take that money and do cool shit with it, and run FPV drones, multi-camera shots, buy awesome equipment, give Nate the best equipment possible to produce a show, and you just start pulling in the right people doing the right things with the right equipment, and the end product is kind of what we've
It's a rising tide.
Very much so.
But you could easily sit back on that and go, yep, the streaming brings us in some good revenue.
Yeah,
in the pocket. We got 1,000 cars.
I used to go on vacation or something, like people accuse me of doing, which I don't go on vacation that much. If you ask me,
we're working on that.
But, yeah, we take that revenue and we
you invest it back in.
We invest it back in. We take that revenue and we buy equipment for racetracks. Mm-hmm. We buy equipment for racetracks for streaming their own events instead of a third person coming in and streaming their events. We want our racetracks to stream themselves and do the same thing we're doing and capture some of that revenue and make their product better and improve their facility and, on and on and on. I mean, it does. It's like you said, right? Rising tides. And I, Lottie at Boone, I say Lottie a lot, but, Lottie at Boone is a really good example of somebody I think is a little bit, from a promoter standpoint in the industry, is a little bit misguided, or not misguided. People don't understand.
Yeah, misunderstood.
Misunderstood.
Mm-hmm. Misinterpreted.
Yeah, I mean, he'll say stuff like, racers are waste for watermelons, and then that gets interpreted into the fact, that Lottie would wants them to race for watermelons. That's not what he said, but whatever, But his position at Boone Speedway, and it shows when you're there, is he could always pay the racers more money, but at the end of the day, if he doesn't have anything money left over to improve the facility, where's the facility at time over time over time? It ends up being outdated for whatever reason, just keep up with the times. And I think Boone Speedway is done a really good job of continuing to somewhat improve the facility as best they can.
Lottie is also a bit of a luminary in sprint car world, because he was a major influence with Ted Johnson with the World of Outlaws, and probably polarizing to some people. Some people revere him.
Yeah.
Some people have a very definite view of why they don't.
Yeah.
He doesn't say a lot, but when he says a lot, he says a lot. I spoke to him for the first time at any real degree at Late Model Nationals in the pits the other night, and we talked for quite a while. He's an interesting guy, but I don't think he allows himself to be understood too much, because he keeps it pretty closed off until he lets it out.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Super Nationals is a bit like Walmart without a ceiling, in my opinion. It attracts this incredibly broad, diverse range of people. It walks an extremely fine line between what is politically correct and what is just good, honest fun. And to be honest, it probably steps far away over into the good, honest fun than it ever thinks about political correctness, which is great.
Yep.
Jerry and Ryan. So I get to work with the best announcers in the planet. I really do. Australia has some phenomenal speedway announcers. I get to work with the voice of Knoxville Raceway, Tony Bockhoven, who was just a giant in the game.
Yeah.
Johnny Gibson, who was, the undisputed, voice of sprint car racing throughout the world. Ryan and Jerry fit in this incredibly different genre, where an announcer is actually a comedian and an entertainer, and someone who understands that it's more about entertaining people for 12 hours a day than it is about necessarily play-by-play. You probably only really got a sense of that just this National's just gone, where you sat in the booth for a little while with them. It's a massive, massive contribution they make to the feel of that event.
For sure, and I wish I could say that like anything, I wish I could say that was planned. Like I'm so smart that I recognize Ryan's talent and I recognize Jerry, and I'm just, hey, these guys will be good together.
Yeah,
it didn't happen like that. The way it happened was Super Nationals is so much racing. One person can't possibly announce that entire event all by themselves for its entirety. So, Ryan started working here, and they said, hey, Ryan, why don't you, and Ryan did some announcing in this area, and Jerry's done some announcing. You know, we're in eastern Iowa, and Jerry's in central, and you know, and so it just kind of happened, you know, and that's what's, to me, that's what the authenticity of that, you know, without having to force it, without having to script it, without having to try to like push things on people. You just let Ryan be Ryan, Jerry be Jerry. They're two totally different people, but it works really well, you know, and I've said this about you, Wade, too, as well. I mean, how you ended up at the Super Nationals,
I have no idea.
Hell if I know. But it was a really, really good idea. And I had to give Jerry credit for that.
Yeah.
It was his idea. You know, I think,
Yeah.
I remember him calling me and saying, hey, I met this guy. And I'm like, okay, well, whatever, you know. And at the time, I think we had Cody or somebody else down there. And there was a little bit of they wouldn't admit this, but there was a little bit of like, I don't know if they get pissed off. I'm not sure. If you put Jerry down in the infield while the races are being called, he didn't want to do that. And you put Ryan down there in the infield, he didn't want to do that. Neither one of them wanted to be in the infield while races were being called. It's like you know,
you're not including them. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they felt, you know, that's not where they want to be. And so having you fit in so well into that, you know, I just think I don't know if you could.
Byron Fichter was going to be. Byron Fichter was going to do what I did. He was going to be the guy doing that, and then I just fell into it. Yeah. It has been the most surprisingly amazing experience of my speedway life, mate. I feel so proud just even to play a little part in it, and the way that your fans react to the event, and the way your team works, and the people at Boone Speedway. It's an incredibly humbling experience. It really is. I wish people outside of America saw that America. Because you don't get portrayed that way in the media outside. You're the gun-loving, Trump-loving lunatics, America, F yeah, you know, all that sort of stuff. But the real beauty of America is at Super Nationals, and you are extremely efficient at what you do, but you never stop wanting to learn, Brett. So that's what I wanted to say to you as I go to sort of wrap this up, that and when I see you could easily sit back and say, we've got almost 10,000 people that drive under our sanction. We've got huge events, got great racetracks, got a really cool TV company that works with this stuff. I'm good. But you don't. You ask me, what are you doing that for? What do you do when you do this? And even 3 minutes before the modified drivers introductions, you and I are talking about it going, how do we make this better? And so you could easily sit back, you know, and eat a steak sandwich and go, I'll let Lordy bark a few orders. But you don't, because you care.
Right. It's no different than we were down there, and you said, this feels a little flat. And I'm like, it does feel flat. Help me out here. You know, fix this flatness. Next thing I know, you got the whole crowd saying YMCA.
IMCA.
I know, but it's known as YMCA. It's one of those songs where, like, everywhere I go, you know, people who know me, I just like IMCA, and I'm like, oh gosh, I stick my fingers in my ears. But to me, it worked. It's so. It fits so well at that event for you to be playing that song. There, I just thought it was awesome.
It works.
Yeah.
I want to get more people to it somehow. I want to get Aussies to come to it somehow because it's such an incredible event. Nate, you know, and his team, and Grainer and Ian, and whenever the phone rings, I can just see Ian scrambling in that thing. Oh, the phone's ringing. Quickly type up. What did he say? Mary from Maryland. How do I type that up? Where do we get a picture of her? So they take every idea and they run with it. And that's what I love. I love the people in the back gate that run the pits for you, because, God, that has to be enormous. The teams themselves, the families, the emotional, that sort of stuff. It's a ripper event, mate. It's absolutely. I love that the two biggest races in the world are in Iowa, the Knoxville Nationals and the Super Nationals.
Yeah.
Imagine if there was the Super Knoxville Nationals. I'll have to get another 900 cars. It's good to see you, mate.
It's good to see you.
Brett Root from Vinton, Iowa. How many people in Vinton?
About 5,000.
Huh.
Rural, small town.
Home of the Alaskan
Iowa.
waffle.
The Alaskan waffle. Correct.
Good. Yeah. Thanks, Nady.
Iowa is the home of the Alaskan waffle.
Well, Vinton is.
I would have never known what that was.
If I hadn't ordered it and not eaten it all.
Yeah.
So that ran like 45, Nate, didn't it?